All right, welcome everyone. My name is Tom Ulanowski, and I'm the chair of the C45 Quality Association. I'd like to welcome all of you as you're logging in to another fantastic webinar brought to you by the C45 Quality Association. While we wait for this webinar to get started and for the remainder of our attendees to log in, I'm going to do what I always do, introduce our association and share with you what we do and why we do it. So I would say that our C45 Quality Association is quite a unique industry association in Canada. We're a non-for-profit membership-backed organization, which means we represent people, not corporations, in this space. We are run by a board of directors of 7, all volunteers, and it was started a few years ago by industry professionals with a focus on quality and regulations. Right now, we represent well over 100 members across Canada that are employed in various quality, regulatory, testing, and consulting roles. And ultimately, what we try to do is strive to be a unified voice of the quality lab and regulatory professionals in the Canadian cannabis industry. We are, in order to further our mission, we do a number of things. A lot of the time, we're hosting virtual events such as this. We try to have about a monthly cadence where we bring on a presenter or a group of panelists like we are today to discuss hot topics in the industry as they relate to quality and regulations. And as we know, quality touches many aspects of the cannabis business. We also do other informal sessions like the C45 quality time webinars, again, held monthly, where it's just kind of an Ask Me Anything, where I sit down or a group of us sits down with all of you, and we can just chat about what's going on and kind of work through some problems people are having. We also in the past have done in-person events, such as our Quality Summit, held a few years ago in Winnipeg. Of course, COVID threw a wrench in those plans the last few years, but we're working towards bringing back some sort of in-person event. So we're in the early stage of planning this. We should have information by the new year, and we're hoping to have a May or June date where our members and people in the industry can meet and have a little bit of a therapy session and kind of discuss what's going on in the sector. And of course, the other big part of what we do is we engage with our regulators regularly. So that's typically Health Canada, but also the provinces and the CRA, where we try to distill the feedback from our members, from our board, from the industry, and provide that constructive feedback to Health Canada, whether that's in writing or in person or virtual meetings. And we've held, I think, 3 or 4 this year. And that relationship has been really great. And I think Health Canada does appreciate that we're able to provide this constructive feedback from members working directly in the sector. So if you want to learn more, please check out our website, c45association.com. Over there, you can look at our events by clicking on the events link. We actually do have another event coming up in about 3 weeks on November 16th, which is related to laboratory accreditation, things like ISO 17025 in the sector. We're going to have representatives from various labs, from CALA, from Standard Council of Canada, and other industry members. So it should be another great event, and please sign up for that. You should get a link to that after this presentation from Zoom with a direct registration. And of course, consider joining us as a member. Membership start at $49 per year for students, $99 for non-voting. Just helps us run our association day to day. Again, we're all volunteers. We just have bills like any non-for-profit, and we use those to cover that, and sometimes our engagements with the regulators. So yes, please check us out. We're also always looking for volunteers and presenters. So if you have any great ideas for panels or events, contact me directly, tom@c45association.com. Awesome. All right, moving on to some housekeeping items. So this webinar is live. It's being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the coming days, likely. You can check that YouTube channel out by searching c45qualityassociation.com. Most of our past events are on there. And if not, we are working to put up all of our archives. We have structured this webinar to be about a 50-minute panel with a presentation followed by a 10 or 15-minute Q&A. So we're going to go right until 5 p.m. Eastern with the panel and then leave 10 or 15 minutes for the Q&A. please use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask your questions. The panelists and I can see them, and we'll kind of take them in order and also prioritize them because I expect there's going to be a lot of questions. So throughout the presentation, pepper them in. If there's any technical issues or any other comments, please use the chat function. I'll remind everyone, please be respectful, please be constructive, try not to be too negative. We're not here to complain, we're here to learn and explore this topic. Okay, so I think with that, we can move on. We have nearly 100 people on the webinar. This is great. So why are we here today? Well, our board of directors has been planning this for a little while now, and it's frankly because we've been hearing more and more that companies in Canada are looking for other opportunities internationally to sell cannabis for medical or scientific purposes, because that's all that's allowed right now under the regulations. So, you know, the industry has just celebrated its fifth year of coming into force. And in Canada, generally, we have about 10 years of a commercial cannabis industry, starting with the MMPR in 2013, 2014. And so over this time, we've seen companies exploring and even building out whole companies based on this export business model. And at its surface, it seems like it's a great gig if you can get it right. I mean, you can fetch premium prices, you can sell larger amounts in bulk, you sometimes don't have to package the product, but there's a lot of challenges. And I'll be honest, I myself don't have much experience directly exporting cannabis with the companies I've been involved with, but I've consulted on some projects, and to explore this topic more, we've invited a number of speakers to discuss their real-world experiences when it comes to exporting cannabis. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce one by one our panelists. So panelists, if I call out your name, please unmute your mic, show your face, and tell us who you are and why you're here. First, we'll start with Brigitte Simons. Brigitte's the CEO of Safari Flower and also a colleague as a director of the C45 Quality Association. Hi, Brigitte.
Hello, a pleasure to be here. I'm CEO of Safari, and I also act as a director on the C45. Safari Flower Company is a licensed cultivator and processor, and we have a strategic focus to bring bulk B2B to the international spaces, primarily as a private or white labeler core business model.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brigitte, and thanks for all that you've done for our association as well. You've been very, very pivotal in growing it. Another colleague of mine at the C45 Quality Association, Brandon Tate. Brandon is also the president of BT Solutions. Please show your face and introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Hey, Tom and everyone. You stopped my video, buddy, so you're going to have to open that back up. There you go. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Brandon Tate. I was VP of Thrive Cannabis back in the day. I've moved on, started 3 separate companies, one being BT Solutions, which is a consulting company, another one BTAB Solutions, which is an international procurement company for foreign entities, licensed entities, and 3 being Lineage Industrial Technologies, a solventless equipment manufacturer. I'm also the vice chairperson of the board for the C45 Association.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Your experience will be invaluable for this discussion, and also we thank you for your efforts here at the association. Up next, we have Scott Mayer, CEO of Miracle Valley Medicinal Alternatives. Scott, say hello to everyone.
There we go. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, as Tom says there, CEO and QAP of Miracle Valley, a cultivator processor in Mission. Prior to that, Tom and I worked together for a few years at Nextleaf. Our focus, not too different than Safari's, is we're pretty dedicated to the export market and have been since 2021. It's kind of the core of our business.
Thanks, Scott. You're also one of the minds behind Citizen Stash, which I know is a favorite brand of the industry, or was anyways. So thanks for coming on. Deepak Anand, a man that needs no introduction, but we'll give him one anyway. Deepak, let us know who you are and what you do and why you're here.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here. I'm the principal at ASDA Consulting Services, operate in quite a few different countries, assist companies with both importing and exporting cannabis into international markets. Very happy to be here and join this conversation.
Thanks, Deepak. I know you and I have been friends for many years, and it's nice to see you here and sharing your experience, especially internationally. And last but certainly not least, we have Marjolène Alie. I hope I'm saying that right. Marjolène's joining us kind of last minute, but we're very happy she has. She's the Senior Manager of Industrial Hemp and Export at the Export Division of Controlled Substances and Cannabis Branch at Health Canada. So Marjolène, thank you so much for joining us. Please share with us who you are and what you do at Health Canada.
Sure. So I'm the senior manager of the industrial hemp unit and the import-export unit. So my team, we look at the import-export applications that are submitted by license holders. And we also take care of any questions, the request for more information, changes to permits, and also some of the reporting requirements associated to permits.
Well, sounds like you're the right person to be speaking with then, hey? That's wonderful. So actually, we're gonna kick off this webinar now that we have met everyone with a 10-minute or so presentation by Marjolène, where she's gonna cover some of the aspects of the program and the process, and then we'll get into the discussion thereafter. So good luck, everyone, and we'll see you on the other side of the presentation. And you can share your screen, Marjolène.
Thank you. So let's do this. Share, and I will present. Perfect. Okay, so today's presentation, I'll be really quick and I'll try to be as quick as possible. I'll present to you some key statistics on the import-export unit. We'll focus on the export process, tips and best practices, and of course at the end, I can answer questions. So we'll move on. Most of the requirements for import-export are outlined in Part 10 of the cannabis regulations, but there are other requirements throughout the regulations. I'd like to focus on the fact that import and export are only for scientific or medical purpose. I've done presentation before, and it seems like this was something that was a surprise for some. So those are the only two reasons why permits can be issued. So the role of the import-export unit, so of course we process permit applications that are sent to us by license holders. We respond to general inquiries. We also report statistics to the International Narcotics Control Board. That is done on a quarterly and on an annual basis. So when you submit your reporting after you've shipped or received your shipment, this information is given to the INCB. And we also work with other teams within Health Canada and with CBSA as well. So mostly that is my team's job. We have a non-binding administrative service standard is 30 business days from the date that the payment is received and confirmed by the department. We suggest, of course, because the clock starts when payment is confirmed, that you pay as quickly as possible. Sometimes license holders think that as soon as they submit a permit application, it goes into the import-export queue, but that is not the case. That's not when the 30-day business standard starts. Our target is 85%. You can see that right now. Throughout the years, it has varied. The 56% was due to COVID and employees being sick, and so that was not a great year. But you can see that 2021 and 2022 we were able to meet our target. Right now, for this fiscal year, we're currently around the 98% mark. And we're able to issue permits in approximately 7 to 14 days. So that's where we're at currently today. This is just key import-export statistics that I wanted to share with you. So you can see the total number of applications received per year. So every year it increases. If we compare the first month of fiscal year, this fiscal year to the previous 6 months in previous fiscal year, we receive about 60% more application. So we're seeing a huge increase. We receive an average of 185 application per month. So it is a lot to process. I just wanted to share that information with you to give you an idea of how many permit and applications we deal with. If the trend continues, we estimate that we will receive about 2,300 applications this fiscal year. You can see the top 5 countries where we export. A lot, like Australia is definitely the main country where we export, and those permits, I'd like to say, like, it includes the number of applications and the number of permits issued. It includes cannabis and hemp. I didn't separate the two, so just be mindful of that. But then the top countries for export of cannabis only includes cannabis. Hemp permits is not in there, and the hemp permits represent about 20% of the type of permits and application we receive. And of course, hemp permits is from license holders that have a license issued under the industrial hemp regulation and not the cannabis regulation. So it's not a low percentage of THC. In this case, it's really license holders that have a hemp license. Hopefully you're able to see this properly, but it's the life cycle of an export permit application. So you can see that it goes through, you send your application, it goes to the import-export unit, who triages. If payment is required, if you're a commercial license holder and there is a payment, then it goes to the cost recovery unit, who provides an invoice. Then it goes to accounts receivable. It makes its way back, and then eventually it goes to the import-export unit queue. We review the application, whether the permit is issued or is refused. It is sent to you, and then after that, there is the reporting requirement. So in a nutshell, that's the process. Before you apply for a permit, this is the information you will need. The type of cannabis you want to ship or receive, the mode of transportation to be used, your port of entry or exits in Canada. Couple of things: we cannot issue export permits that exceed what was authorized by the importing countries. So if you export, it needs to be, it match the associated import permit, or it has to be lower. When applying for an export permit, the need for a foreign import permit is determined by the destination country. And it also depends of the type of cannabis that is being exported. Suggest that for more information that you contact the appropriate foreign authority to confirm the requirements. The CTLS, so the Cannabis Tracking and Licensing System, I'll hopefully not use a lot of government lingo and acronyms, but CTLS, I imagine most of you are aware. This is the system that we use to issue licenses and permits. It allows you to have up to 5 different types of cannabis in one shipment. If you'd like to add more, you can create a document with the relevant information and submit this in the supporting documents section. So we will be able to add more type of cannabis, even though the limit in the CTLS is 5. So we can do that in the back end for you. But again, it needs to align with the associated import permit. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. This is the information that is required. So in the shipment detail section of CTLS, all the fields are mandatory except for plants and seeds. So most of the requests for more information that we send out and the possible problems with the application are due to fields not being completed. So that is most of the requests that we send out. So here is the information that is needed. If your cannabis doesn't have a brand name, it's okay. You can write non-applicable. And then the other RMI, the request for more information that we send out, is because the percentage of THC and CBD doesn't align with the total quantity of THC and CBD in the shipment. This is one of the most seen error that the team sees. So just make sure that that information is aligned. And there's also a section that you can upload documents. So don't hesitate to use that section and provide us the information that you think will be needed for the reviewer to look at your application. So whatever you would put in an email, you can put into that document and send it through the CTLS with your application. So that's a bit of a tip here. Okay. So as mentioned, the import-export unit can only begin the permit application review after fee has been paid, if applicable. Payment doesn't guarantee that a permit will, doesn't guarantee that a permit will be issued. The fees are non-refundable. They are processed in the order they are received. So if you are able to pay faster, or depending on the type of payment method that you choose, your application will be in the import-export queue more quickly. So you can see here that if you decide to pay with a credit card, it's faster than by check or a wire transfer. So this is a bit of a tip, and I think some license holders perhaps don't realize that depending on your method of payment, it could take longer to receive your permit, because we only review once payment has been received and confirmed. If you have outstanding invoices and you make a payment without mentioning to which invoice it should be applied, Health Canada will pay the most outstanding invoice. So sometimes you have an urgent permit, but you still have permits that have not been paid. It is possible for you to write to the accounts receivable and say, I would like to pay this permit first. So if you don't do that, they'll just use the most outstanding permit. So sometimes that has happened. License holders would contact us and say, I've paid, I want this permit urgently for whatever reason. And then we figure out it's because the payment was applied to another permit. So hopefully that's helpful information for you, and you have the information for the accounts receivable if you want to do that. This is also online. I can share the information if you don't know where to find it, but hopefully that is good information. Am I good on time? Let's see. 2 minutes. We can amend permits, so only active permits can be modified. So once a permit has expired, we cannot modify the permit. So we need a couple of days, a couple of business days to look at the application and get it approved. So if you see that your permit is to expire and you've received a new associated import permit, for example, that has a new validity date, or your license has been renewed and you would like to extend your permit based on that new license expiry date, you can submit it, but just make sure that it is active and we have enough time to review your change requests. These are the type of changes you can do. So you can do transit details, shipment details, or your expiry date. Again, you can upload a document containing the reason for the change that is helpful to us. And then the responsible person or the alternate can submit a change request. The reporting requirements. So you must confirm shipment detail within 15 days of importing or exporting. This information is used to report again to the International Narcotics Control Board. That is why we must have the information. The confirmation of shipment can be done by someone else than the responsible person. You just need to provide this person with the role in CTLS. So we know that responsible people are busy. So hopefully this can be done by someone else in your organization. The team verifies that your confirmation of shipment is aligned with what was permitted. If there is a discrepancy, for example, you exported more than what was permitted, it may be reported to the Compliance and Enforcement Directorate for further action. If you haven't used your permit, you still need to inform us. So please report 0 as part of your confirmation of shipment. If you don't do it, then you'll be contacted. Someone in the team will be emailing you. Okay. And then finally, a couple of more tips and recommendation. When you apply for an export permit, ask for the maximum quantity allowed per the associated import permit. So you can always ship less than what was permitted. So that way you don't need to ask for like a new permit from the importing country. Just ask for what's on the permit. Use a payment method that can be verified faster. Again, using a credit card instead of a wire transfer makes a lot of difference in the processing time. Complete all the mandatory fields for each section. If your shipment contains no CBD or THC, like you're exporting CBG, for example, you can enter 0 in those fields, or else you'll get a request for more information from the team. We kind of get it, like we know if you put like 100% CBG, the issue is we don't want to modify anything in the back end without your consent. So that's why sometimes you may think that you're getting a lot of requests for more information, is because we just want to make sure that you authorize us to make the changes. Ensure that your quantity, volume, and concentration aligns. The team will do calculation, and if they see that it's off, they will be contacting you again, just to make sure that we don't make changes that you don't want or that we don't understand. Upload a document if you want to provide us with additional information. Add people who are authorized to communicate with Health Canada. So for us, we'll always go to the RP. We have to communicate with the RP first, but you can add more people. So, we'll communicate with anybody that has a consent to communicate. So you can go to the licensing team and say, I'd like to add more people. And then that's how we know that other people are authorized to speak on behalf of your organization. If you are unable to submit a new permit application, it is likely because you have not reported on an expired permit. So this has happened. So because the reporting requirement is 20 days after your you've received your shipment or you shipped, we've put something in the system that kind of blocks license holders from submitting new application, because at some point, a couple of years ago, we didn't get the all confirmation of shipments that we were supposed to receive. And because we've got international obligations, we really want to make sure that we have those reports. So that is likely the situation. So what we do is, when you receive your export permit, if it expires, let's say in 3 months, we'll give you 3 months and 20 days to report. So it's all, you've got 20 days after the expiry date of your permit, because we have no idea when you actually ship. So those were my tips and tricks. I hope they were helpful. I hope I didn't go over time too much. And that's it, Tom.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marjolène. That's really good. I think I'll just invite all of our panelists back online here. No, I think that's very good. And we'll just a reminder, we are recording this and we'll be posting this presentation. So if anyone wants copies of those interesting slides, they'll be on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the weekend. Okay, so why don't we just kind of kick it off there. On the topic of tips and tricks, we've heard from the Health Canada side, who sees 1 or 2 of these applications a year, or maybe 1 or 2,000. What about those on the panel here that have actually led shipments across international lines? Any tips or tricks, high level on your end, that you'd like to add for our listeners? Just feel free to unmute yourself and talk.
Tom, yeah, I think one thing that's important here is the coordination of the import permit expiry and your export permit. Different regions have different expiry dates, some as short as 3 months. So when you're trying to plan your production and plan where your crops are going, in my case, that can get kind of tight, and you can't import if the import permit has expired. So there is a hard line there, and you just got to make sure. We've been close to that line a couple times, so make sure that that's planned out the best you can.
Yeah, maybe I
Just
just
one-
add a bit more, Tom. The test results are a big key of the application process, and many permits will actually require that all cannabinoids are listed on the permit as import, which have to now match on the exporting process, on the exporting paperwork. You need to match every single cannabinoid that has been listed on that import, despite what Health Canada requires as percentage of CBD and THC. You also need to include the other cannabinoids if they are included on the import permit. So that test result that needs to go to all parties involved in the transport is really key on having that accuracy in your hands to properly apply for that permit.
I'd like to add on that and say the CFIA phytosanitary certificate is a critical part for different countries, and a lot of people forget about that, leave it till the very last minute, and or don't do it, and then it gets stopped at customs overseas. Also, the CFIA and other countries have been known to change these requirements on a whim. So it's a very good idea to check the CFIA phytosanitary or the phytosanitary certificate requirements for the country of import about 2 weeks prior to shipping, just to make sure that that CFIA can cover the proper things.
And that CFI phytosanitary inspection, how long does that process take from when you request that inspection till you get that certificate?
Extremely rapid. The CFIA responds back within, I would say, 1 to 2 days, and typically they'll be on site within the week. It's not expensive. It's maybe, I think, $40. Brigitte, you probably have a better number on that now, but it's quick, it's cheap, it's just something that needs to be done.
Yeah, it's under $70.
Yeah.
Easy. Deepak, anything to add there? I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I just thought I would just echo kind of some of the tips and tricks that Marjorie kind of outlined. One of them, perhaps the most common one, being the credit card payment. I've certainly seen clients on a number of occasions try and either send checks or do wire transfers, and often those don't reach Health Canada. And so I cannot stress enough the use of credit card payment with respect to how quickly those are actioned in. I mean, once credit card payment is received, as Marjorie outlined, there's an internal process at Health Canada that gets started, and that process cannot start if payment has not been received. So I think that's a really, really important step. I also, whenever you get the questions, Tom, would love to look at addressing the question from Ryan on US exports.
Absolutely. We'll get to that near the end. And Marjolène, I noticed that one of the payment options is applying a credit to your account. Do some license holders do that to speed up processing? They'll do a lump sum payment to Health Canada and kind of hold those funds there?
I believe so, or they have like a credit already, like for some reason, like they, for other, not all permits, but whatever money they owe for Health Canada. I'm not sure, but I think you can definitely inquire with the cost recovery unit, but some license holders have credit. How they get the credit, I'm not really sure. But that is a possibility.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that's great. Marjolène, again, thank you for that. I hope those are all valuable tips. And at the end of the day, it's paperwork that everyone needs to review because there's controlled substances crossing international boundaries and borders. So make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. So let's take a step back now and maybe frame this conversation. I want to kind of spend quite a bit of time on the next two questions related to why a Canadian company would decide to pursue some sort of exports. And then I want to dive into specific countries and look at the benefits and challenges of specific jurisdictions, many of which Marjolène listed in her presentation. So again, I'll open it up to everyone here. Why have some of you or some of your peers in the industry explored the export market? What are some benefits and what are some high-level challenges?
Okay, I'll begin. One great advantage is to have your products in the medical sector across the world that have already shown success in Canada. From a brand perspective, the medical brands, I think, have a great opportunity overseas to actually really be well positioned into physician care and the physician prescription patient mechanisms that wasn't quite exploited well enough in Canada that offers that opportunity abroad. From a pure business standpoint, there are revenue advantages for our company to have B2B supply contracts for international customers. One large, I guess, advantage to supplying overseas is that with the right reporting is that you can have a zero-rated tax declaration for your import. So although you still have to pay tax, you can properly declare that as a zero-rated tax product. And as long as you can show proper paperwork, there's advantages to not having to pay the Canadian tax system, but have a zero-rated tax position to supplying that product abroad. So from the globalization standpoint and then the sheer revenue standpoint in this trend, there's advantages for our company to sell B2B bulk abroad.
Thanks, Brigitte. Scott, what are some reasons why you decided to kind of focus on the export market more recently?
It was just tactical. Miracle Valley didn't really have a big position in the recreational market yet. It was primarily a partner cultivator and a grow partner for others. And the decision was made early on that this would be a bit of an advantage for us based on the idea of our size. We were a smaller, mid-size, large-size craft cultivator producing premium product. And that was kind of a hole in the export market. Some of the bigger companies were already over there back in 2021, but I thought that this was an advantage for us. where we didn't really have an advantage in the domestic market. You know, that ship had sailed. So we kind of got lumped into continuing down that path. You know, the initial plan was to carve off portions of lots or rooms and explore a domestic market in parallel. But the reality of the situation was it was enough challenge and work to maintain the export path that we haven't put a lot of effort into the domestic market. Now with more competition, which we can talk about later, in the European and the foreign markets, it's making it more reasonable to get back into the domestic market and build a brand here and do some additional things strategically. But in the early days, yeah, the premium and the ease in staying in bulk made it a simple decision for a company like us, who's primarily a cultivator.
Thanks, Scott. And Brandon or Deepak, you guys work kind of as consultants and with both sides in Canada and abroad, kind of similar to that. But why are your clients or your peers overseas interested in Canadian cannabis?
Tom, I'm happy to take a crack at that. I'd say for the same reasons why product is succeeding in the domestic market, right? I think the same quality arguments, the same consistency arguments are also present on the international market. So the same reason that a particular product is moving in Canada with great velocity, and we're certainly seeing a lot of craft cannabis products really make it mainstream now. It's the same reason why and what's happening internationally. At the outset, there was a very limited supply of products, as Scott has outlined. But now there's, the international markets are starting to look at quality and consistency of product, and also rewarding people. So there is still a premium to be made, and people need to be a little bit careful about this, but there certainly is a premium to be made if you've got a high quality product that you can put out of the market internationally.
Thanks, Deepak. Brandon, can you speak to that premium a bit? Like when you compare the domestic market on a flower, a cannabis flower versus international, what kind of premiums are we seeing?
We're seeing pretty large premiums. Domestic market, bulk wholesale prices, you're looking at pretty good pricing, being $320 to $350 a gram, and wholesale prices elsewise, you're getting a much bigger margin for sure. That is being impacted right now in certain countries. There was some pretty severe price compression in Australia recently, with the introduction of a certain product line from an LP. And that really heavily impacted the industry pretty quickly, actually. And a lot of prices we've seen drop over the past 3 to 4 months. It's one of the major exporting countries that Marjolène outlined there. So that's seeing some compression. In other countries like Germany, Israel, it's been pretty stable. Germany in particular is still commanding quite a premium, and Israel stable over the past few years. There was some fluctuation and higher price points about a year or two ago, when they decided to tighten some of the regulations and restrict the imports to Israel. But they've since loosened up a little bit with the introduction of their IMC GAP certifications and GACP. A lot of growers are getting GACP now, and we're starting to see some prices stabilize there. So
great. So maybe that's a good segue there. You mentioned a lot of acronyms, some of which I know. GACP and EU GMP, and you also mentioned a bunch of countries. So let's kind of delve into the weeds here a little bit. Marjolène did display some of the major importing countries, and let's focus on Europe, maybe to start. Germany, Brigitte and Scott, I know you have personal experience doing business there. Can we talk a bit about the benefits and the challenges and some of the requirements to export, let's just leave it at dried cannabis and maybe extracts to Germany?
Sure, maybe I begin. So Safari has undergone a year of being accredited and undergoing inspections for EU GMP certifications. That gives you, I guess, a ticket to address the market. That doesn't necessarily mean you're in the market, but it addresses the market. And to achieve that it is a highly advantageous position to also have a sponsor on the other side, which would be perhaps an importer, a distributor, or a processor, although there are less of them, in Europe to assist on building supply contracts and QA to QA department relationships that will set the pace for success. And so in our experiences, we manage quite a few relationships along that supply chain in Europe. There's an importing group, there's a processing group, there's a final packaging / processing group if those are two different, and then there's a distribution network. And all along that chain, there are QAPs, the equivalent of qualified quality assurance professionals that have to attest that the cannabis moving through that supply chain has been through the legalities of the importing law, but also the quality dossier of that EU GMP business. And the way that they have validated that process could have small nuances to how you've interpreted the law. And so in our experience, having alignment with the QA groups from the importing standpoint, then also the processing standpoint, to understand how that QP is going to handle a product, retest it for according to the geography's law, and then meet their own EU GMP validated release to market process. Without that full understanding of that supply chain's QA processes, you incur more risk than what could be laid out as you're designing those supply chain contracts.
Great, Scott. Thanks, Brigitte. Scott, anything to add? And also, I guess you've worked with other partners in other countries that then distribute into Germany. Not sure if you want to elaborate on that aspect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Brigitte there. There's a lot of potential pitfalls, and what we've learned over the last 2 years now is to do the work up front as much as you can, and try and get alignment as best you can. There's still unknowns, and there's still things that change outside of your control, but there are a lot of things that you can do with trying to get aligned with the different QA groups and processors, and we are slightly different in that we're not EU GMP. We export under 3 different flavors of GACP into 3 different regions. But all of those 3 regions, we have a processing partner and then either a packaging or distribution partner downstream of that. And all 3 of those have slightly different requirements, right? So different specifications, different quality agreements, different supplier agreements. So there's a lot of 90% of it is the same, I would say, but the 10% that's different is the 10% that can bite you. So trying to get on top of all that and keep things straight is very important. So we maybe, in hindsight, maybe shouldn't have tried to get into 3 different operations. But for me, hedging my bets, I wanted to have some ability and some security and not being in control of any of those other businesses. But that has, it comes with a cost and a lot of regulatory and paperwork burden. But now that you're through it and you've learned those lessons, it is fairly straightforward. It's if you build the right processes, as you know, Tom, then it's a little bit of Groundhog Day. You do the same thing over and over again and control what you can. But getting there is a challenge. It is a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just sounds like you have a lot of people, a lot of partners to appease. Not only is it the importer, but like Brigitte and you mentioned, you have this whole supply chain of packaging, processing, distribution. As an exporter, though, who are you typically? I mean, I guess you're appeasing everyone, but you're interfacing with the importer primarily. That's the main contact, generally speaking. Is that correct?
We've seen challenges with the importing group being, we'll say, positioned as a medical patient interface excellence or mastery in medical patient or doctor networks. That would be the importer. The processor would be classically aligned like processors that we have in Canada. And so you have the commercial requirements to get supply chain going because they've promised a network of doctors and patients that products are going to be available to them. And then on the flip side, you have a processor that has really stringent quality control checkpoints from a QAP looking at the Canadian test result all the way to an OOS that may result from a test result achieved in the state of Germany. And if one compound panel is OOS, the rest are passing. What do you do? And what's that OOS procedure to please all the moving parts in the supply chain? And so you can have the commercial effort wanting to pull, but the processing QP saying, no, something is off track, and we're going to retest or revalidate a different set of rules that may have not been previewed in your supply contract design.
Thanks, Bridget. That makes sense. So it sounds like well-defined quality agreements, specs, everything from test requirements. That needs to
how you handle an OOS.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. I want to move on to the rest of Europe. I know Germany is a big market, but we have other jurisdictions that I kind of want Deepak to discuss. Deepak, you have experience starting a company, I believe, in Malta, and you do work in the UK and even Poland. In a few words, because I know our time is sneaking up on us here, can you kind of talk about the rest of Europe, how that's evolving, and where you see current or future prospects and benefits and challenges?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll preface my comments by saying Germany is still the largest market in Europe for cannabis by a long shot, right? It's markets 1, 2, and 3. So if you're really looking at expanding into Europe, Germany is kind of where, you'd want to focus. Having said that, of course, there are markets, just recently, Denmark showed pretty significant growth in patient numbers year over year. And certainly the United Kingdom and Poland are areas that are really picking up. I think it's important to step back. The comments that Brigitte made with respect to quality and regulatory are really important to factor in. And the biggest difference between these markets is it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Just because you've gotten EU GMP doesn't really mean that you can now start to take all this product you have and put it into every other market that might exist. And that's one of the most common myths that most people kind of fall into is, great, now I've got EU GMP, I can start moving all this product into the UK and to Poland and into Denmark and into Germany. And the answer is no, because every market has very specific requirements and often very separate and different requirements than what market X has. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. With respect to the United Kingdom and Poland specifically, there are different regulatory regimes. Like Poland has a very long and complex registration process. So from the time that you want to bring a product in, you need to work backwards in terms of when you actually put your application in, and it's several months. It's 7, 8, or 9 months. And so I think that is important to keep in mind as we speak about some of these other markets. But also, to a large extent, you want to hedge your bets a bit, right? So Germany is starting to get saturated now. So, and the United Kingdom, for example, is a market that is likely to open up. I mean, the challenge in that market so far has been specialist GPs prescribing, and that is going to open up over time. So it's certainly a market that I'm paying very close attention to, because it will expand significantly over the next little while. So it might be one that's worth looking at.
Great, thanks, Deepak. Brendan, I do want to jump into Australia, but before we do, Scott, I want to bring it back to you. You have a lot of experience exporting to Israel, and it seems like Germany and Israel tend to be very common pathways that the cannabis takes. Can you discuss the benefits of going to Israel and maybe touch on how recent events in the region might be complicating that?
Yeah, they are quite different. Different sort of auditing regimes and different specifications and requirements on the products. So you kind of got to pick your path with your product. I'd like to maybe add a little bit to what Deepak said there, that the registration of products is important in different regions. So it's not like you can just offer a product up to a new region if you have more than your other region takes. Usually there's quite a registration process and there's a bunch of requirements around that. So you've got to be a little strategic with that. But in Israel, specifically about the current situation in Israel, it hasn't affected us yet. We have a import permit and export permit in hand. We're planning to ship as early as next week if we can get everything in line. But we're gonna take that day by day. We've been delivering into Israel quite extensively since, I guess, 2021, late 2021, early 22, where we were initially approved to sell into Israel with a large partner. That partner also, has a flow-through model where they sell outside of Israel. They can broker or move our cannabis into Australia or into Germany themselves or other areas. So we're not too involved with that downstream, but it does afford us a bigger market than just selling directly into Israel or limiting our sales into Israel. So for us, anyways, in our experience, Israel has been issuing far larger POs than we can fulfill. So that gives me some comfort there. Whereas Germany, the concern in Germany is that there'll be further and further compression. More and more people, for all the reasons mentioned, are getting in there. Eventually, it's going to be a constriction on either the price or the size of the orders, because they can only absorb so much at this state.
Thanks, Scott. And just to confirm, Israel, the benefit there over a place like Germany or Europe is EU GMP is typically not required, right, for importing there.
Yeah, we currently don't export under EU GMP into Germany either. One of our partners we deliver into Germany in a processor just outside Berlin. The other German partner we export in through Portugal, and their processors in Portugal. But again, both as versions of GACP product. Israel as well is GACP compliant product under a different auditing regime. The difference there, which is a tangible difference, is we ship into Israel fully irradiated or e-beamed product. So it negates any concern we may have in Germany with any kind of micro issues or anything like that. And we've never seen any issues, but it certainly is a potential for concern. So that is a benefit.
Thanks, Scott. Now switching to Brandon and Brigitte, I know you export or have in the past exported to Australia, a country which now has new regulations related to EU GMP requirements. Can you both touch on that and your experience in Australia as compared to Germany, perhaps?
Sure, I'll take that first and then pass it over to Brigitte if that's all right.
Sure.
So as of July 1st, 2023, that's when the changes happened in the regulations. The big thing is obviously manufacturing quality. That's section 13 of their regulations. Essentially, to summarize it, if you have GACP and you have a GMP partner in Australia or buyer in Australia, then you can ship. If you do not have a GMP partner in Australia, you will have to have EU GMP or equivalent. For extracts, that's a different story. They do not apply EU GMP or Section 13 to extracts that will be used as a starting material for an EU GMP processor in Australia. That's pretty much the summary.
Yeah, I think you said it well. It also comes down to the two parties qualifying each other, because in the end, the Australian law is going to have to defend what product they brought in and sold to market. So there is a qualifying step of that QA group having to vendor qualify as GACP, which is sometimes a third-party certification like the European Control Union would provide, but also just tangibly two QA groups vendor qualifying each other, understanding batch record release, and then they can defend that the product had been produced, manufactured under the law. So there's nuances around that, and it really comes down again to two QA groups adjoining in the validation, the vendor qualification, and that the product's batch records are compliant with the law that they have to defend when it goes to market.
Perfect. Deepak, you have something to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a important clarification. I think it was mentioned EU GMP. EU GMP is not necessarily the gold standard for Australia. It would be TGA GMP or equivalent. So, and the TGA is doing a number of audits, including in the United States at the moment. So it would be TGA GMP or equivalent.
Thank you. So now I'd like to spend the last 5 minutes before we get into Q&A, because the Q&A is piling up here, talking about quality. We had many other plans talk about a business aspect, things like tax implications, cash flow, banking issues. But I think overall, to sum it up, I've been hearing that the export market, and this was mentioned here, is becoming saturated, and maybe certain jurisdictions are. And perhaps some of these jurisdictions will at some point onboard their own domestic production, which will phase out the opportunity for Canadian companies to export. So all of you, or some of you, do you think that, I mean, we're still early in the cannabis legalization efforts globally, but at this point, if someone is considering exporting, given the challenges with QA and batch records and testing and all that fun stuff, would you say that a new company should still consider exporting, or at this point are we kind of reaching some sort of saturation point? I'll open that up to all of you, whoever wants to talk about that, and then we'll do 1 or 2 QA questions.
I'm happy to kick it off. I think basic business fundamentals, which seem to have been lost early on in early cannabis days in Canada, still apply, right, to the international market. I think you have to understand, what is your why? Why are you getting into it? What is it good that you're able to do? Are you able to produce really well at a good cost, a quality product? So all the basic business kind of metrics still need to be analyzed very carefully. In addition to that, I think you need to look at what's happening internationally. I'll certainly talk about the German market as an example, and the recent kind of noise around legalization and what that actually means in practical sense. So, for those that might not be aware, Germany is proceeding down a legalization pathway. It's going to be sort of a 2-step process. But what's important for the purpose of this conversation is the most immediate change that's going to happen is on the medical side. So cannabis is no longer going to be considered a narcotic. That unlocks a number of various legislations to enable medical access to be perhaps more expanded to a greater degree. And what that means is there's going to be a requirement for more product in the domestic German market. They certainly are cultivators in Germany, but there is a quota under which they fall. Again, it's not clear whether that quota will be expanded. So I certainly see in the short term a real requirement in Germany for medical cannabis. I think the question of, should you get in, needs to be analyzed very, very carefully. There's a number of risks along the process. Brigitte has outlined some of them on the QA side, but also from a business side, there's a number of risks. I mean, supply chain traceability is starting to become more and more common. I've seen inspections starting to really take place in terms of vetting the entire GMP process backwards. So there's a lot of those sorts of risks that you want to factor in to making your decision.
Thanks, Deepak. Anyone else, or should we just move on to 1 or 2 QA related questions and then the Q&A? Perfect. Let's do that. So a lot of the discussion here has been aligning with your partners abroad, especially the QA teams. Like Brigitte mentioned, you might have subject your samples of cannabis to a panel of tests here in Canada. They all pass. You ship it across the border. Their QA team grabs a sample, and lo and behold, you have a hit on micro, for example, in Germany, where you can't irradiate. What has everyone's experience been, and perhaps some warnings to our audience as to what happens when that is the case? And can you recover that cannabis shipment? Can you send it back? Can anyone kind of touch on that?
I can touch on a little bit. So I have heard of this happening a few times, actually, where there has been a micro hit in Germany. We've actually helped find processing companies in the EU to take this product and remediate it or extract it. And that's one avenue. I haven't heard of product being returned. I would let Marjolène probably take that question. But yeah.
Okay, I'll add. So your Canadian release process, what lab you've chosen, has to be a predetermined lab with your processor. as they have their lab that should align with the method validations for those susceptible contamination panels, such as the micro panel, total yeast and mold, and total aerobic microcounts. If the two labs do not have a baseline standardized consistency between how they test, you are entering your product into a blind spot of which you will not know what the measuring stick really should be before you release it. So that's call out number one. Call out number two is R&D done ahead of your shipment to understand what your risk is with a range, and a design of experiment internally to understand what your range can be on a certain cultivar being registered and then being positioned to export overseas. So if you understand the range of which your products may reach for microbial contamination and you've really stress test that, then you can communicate with the other side with your design experiment, with your data, to show to the QP on the other side that you are giving them the most rugged, tested, variable data to make a good decision on the risk that they will face when they have to test it. Because you cannot just decide at the last minute to irradiate the product and enter it into market. It is a fundamental business block to make that decision halfway through the process.
Good advice, Brigitte. Marjolène, have you experienced this where a cannabis company wants to ship a cannabis back home, and are they able to do that?
Yeah, so we've received a few questions and application. The import-export unit is guided by the policy that's published in the Cannabis Import-Export Bulletin. It outlines the limited circumstances for importing, and return of product is not one of those limited circumstances. So, we're concerned with possibly the quality of the product. Was it altered? In what condition was it kept? The goal of the Cannabis Act and the regulation is to offer quality cannabis, safe cannabis for Canadians. So because we can't guarantee how the cannabis was stored in the foreign country, it is very difficult for us to issue an import permit. And it also, how does it stay on the medical market, right? Because it can only be imported for scientific or medical market. How can we ensure as a regulator that it stays on the medical side? We've tried to offer solutions to some license holders. For example, import a small quantity for scientific purpose, test it, and then if it's fine, then at least the shipment is still there, but import a small quantity for scientific purpose and do your investigation. So that's one of the things that we've suggested in the past.
Great, thank you. All right, panel, time flies. It's 5:10 or 2:10 p.m. where I am. We have about 5 minutes for questions. We've answered and touched on a few already, but feel free to pull up that Q&A yourself. If there's anyone that wants to answer any right now, please go ahead, and if not, I'll pick a few here and we can pick them apart. Deepak, I know that you kind of flagged a few to answer.
Yeah. So just really quickly, I think there was a question around US. I think Ryan Lee further down answered part of it, but I just wanted to let Ryan know that, there are certain products that are being exported to the US, including THC. There are DEA permits that are approved in the United States. So there are a couple of companies that are bringing in products from Canada. So I don't know if Marjorie is able to comment on sort of, why it's top 5 and how much of it might be hemp versus cannabis. But I can say on the cannabis THC side, there certainly are exports happening for medical purposes for those DEA license holders.
Yeah, I'd have to go back on my stats. So the stats that I provided for the US are only cannabis. So it doesn't include hemp license holders, so grains and seed that are on the list of approved cultivars. So there may be some hemp that is considered hemp by the US. But to me, like, if I remember correctly, a lot of it is for scientific purpose. It's not for medical purpose. And it's other things. It could be like cannabis, like dried cannabis, but it's also a lot of extracts for scientific purpose.
Just moving on, there's two questions that I just want to really quickly answer. I think one generally was a format of product. So I think it really varies by country to country. I think there was a question around shatter specifically that was asked. Certainly, Australia is a market that has a varying degree of products that you can export, obviously pursuant to GMP and other conditions that we've talked about. And there's more restrictive markets that kind of look at just flower or API in some instances. So it really varies from, flower to seeds. It really depends on the market, and, finished product forms vary. And then just one more question, really. I think there was a question on consultants and certifications. I think this is an overarching message. Please be very careful of what certification you are thinking that you're getting as far as it relates to EU GMP and a recognized GMP from a government agency. The only person that can issue that permit is a government authorized entity or somebody that's been nominated, such as a state government in Germany. There is no other government that, no other consultant, no other private business that can give you a GMP certificate. So just please be very careful of that. And again, it really depends on the market you're going to. So if you're going to Israel, you can get CUMCS, which is a private entity that gives you that certification, and that's okay for that specific market. But as it relates to GMP or EU GMP, only a government authorized entity can award you that certificate.
That's a great point. Can anyone touch on what the time commitment and cost is for someone interested in getting an EU GMP certification?
Here I can speak to my experiences. First is attaining a sponsor. So that's an importing group or a distributor that requests that your product meets the needs of their patients and their demand. Once you have a sponsor, they and their narcotics officer will then begin to engage with your quality team to devise how that products are registered, what brackets, what specifications they will be registered under. And then they have to engage the regulators to take on their importing request for your products. Once you get to that stage, after 4 months of registration time for a non-irradiated cannabis product, you then begin a qualification period for your EU GMP site master file. You then have to pass numerous pre-audit inspections, and then you have to be prepared for the actual federal inspection, where the German regulators from their particular province of jurisdiction will come and inspect your site for their requirements for the GMP certification. Once you get to there, you have to then supply a report after their findings have been concluded on how you're going to address your corrective and preventative action plan against that report. Once that report has been received and approved, you then have to create a government site website account and then be issued your certificate. So this process can take up to 3 years for certain procedures and processes, especially to get approved on that report and have a booking to have the regulator come to your site for your full inspection. So this could be an arduous 3-year endurance marathon, especially if you're really not equipped with the right pre-audit information and that your site master file has to truly start from scratch.
Thanks, Brigitte. Sounds like this isn't an overnight solution to an ailing business if you're considering exports and applying for EU GMP.
Right, for that market.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would even say the GACP equivalent accreditation also is quite intensive, with a lot of inspections, unannounced, announced, to maintain that accreditation. It's a commitment of the business, it's a commitment of the resources you have to put to your QA teams that are not releasing products for domestic as a consequence.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I think with that, we're going to conclude our panel because we're at an hour and 15 minutes here. I want to thank all of our lovely panelists, Deepak, Scott, Brigitte, Brandon, and Marjolène for sharing your time and expertise with us. We obviously had 10 times as many questions planned, but c'est la vie, that's how these things go. So once again, this will be published on our YouTube channel in the coming days. Hopefully, check out our events page for more of these types of events. We have one on November 16th. You can register for that. There's a link on our website right now. And yeah, I hope all of you took away some good information here. And if you have any questions for us, reach out to us at board@c45association.com or me, and we'd love to host one of you for a panel like this one day. So thanks again, everyone. Be safe out there. Best of luck in the international markets, and try to get some sleep there, Scott. It'll be okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.